Hello and welcome to my vlog, where I will be discussing how the police are dealing with the issue of domestic violence. Throughout the duration of this vlog, I will be discussing what policing is, what domestic violence is, the 8 stages of domestic violence according to Dr. Jane Monckton-Smith, coercive control, the legislation in relation to domestic violence, how the police are dealing with the issue, who the victims are, the list of controls victims feel, why people do not report the issue, and weaknesses and strengths of how the problem is policed. So, what is policing? There are 2 central ideas to community policing, the first being that they focus on crimes that are committed more than once by the same individual or same group of individuals, and the second idea is that the police need allies when solving these certain offences. What is domestic violence? Well, there are many academics who speak about defining this issue, and more often than not, the definitions are very similar. For example, Lawrence's definition of domestic violence is verbal, sexual, emotional, intimidation and financial abuse. Compared with Kelly's definition, which is that domestic violence is emotional, physical, sexual and psychological abuse of power, they both have the same idea. Now that the definitions are out of the way, a study conducted by Dr. Jane Monckton-Smith found that 30,000 women were killed by current or former partners in 2017, and 80% of those partners were male. After this study was conducted, Dr. Jane Smith found that there were 8 stages to domestic violence. The first, past history of violence. The second, quick developing relationship. The third, coercive or controlling behaviour. The fourth, trigger to threaten the offender. The 5th, escalation. 6th, change in thinking. The 7th, planning. And 8th, homicide. Coercive control carries a maximum of 5 years imprisonment, a fine, or both, and is defined as controlling behaviour. Furthermore, there are many acts and legislation in relation to domestic violence. The Violence Against Women, Domestic Abuse and Sexual Violence Act 2015 aims to protect, prevent and support women in Wales. And the Domestic Violence, Crime and Victims Act 2004 sets out the legislation of same-sex couples who are victims of domestic violence as well as non-cohabiting couples. Using the legislation as a guideline, how do they police domestic violence? The police use risk-led approaches to police domestic violence and have a duty to take positive action when dealing with these incidents. The risk-led approach stems from the Domestic Abuse, Stalking and Harassment and Honour-Based Violence 2009 Act. They target the people and victims who are in the most serious risk of being harmed by their partner. Due to risk-led approaches targeting victims who have a more high risk and severe abuse, there is more concern on women as domestic violence is the biggest threat to them globally. However, that is not to say that men can't be victims too, as out of 1.9 million adults aged 16 to 59 in 2018, 700,000 of the victims were male. This list of controls is based off methods used for submission at communist prison camps, but victims of domestic violence have always explained that this is how they felt when dealing with an abusive partner. So, if that is how they felt, why do they not report it? Well, people don't report domestic violence out of shock that it actually has happened to them, fear that it will happen again and even worse, self-doubt and thinking it was their fault, as well as humiliation that they let themselves get treated that way. Also, 70% of cases go unreported out of fear of how the police will act towards them, and in 2019, only 11% of domestic violence crimes led to charging the offenders. So, on to the limitations. There are many limitations of policing domestic violence, as there are so many cases and so many differences between every case that it's hard to generalise and make legislation which fits with everyone. So, there were only 8 out of 43 police forces in England and Wales which responded well to domestic violence incidents, and there was a lack of visible police leadership as well as poor victim care after the incident. Noticeably, there are more weaknesses than there are strengths to policing domestic violence. However, the one main strength is that they have a witness protection programme for people who need security, who have felt threatened by a partner or loved one. Thank you so much for listening to my vlog.